new electrochemical technology could de-acidify the oceans and even remove carbon dioxide in the process. Charles-Francois Delanoy, Basil Abdelkader from the Conversation Report. In the effort to combat the catastrophic impacts of global warming, we must accelerate carbon emission reduction efforts and rapidly scale strategies to remove carbon dioxide, CO2, from the atmosphere and the oceans. The technologies for reducing our carbon emissions are mature. Those for removing carbon from the environment are not, and need robust support from governments and the private sector. Only 45% of carbon dioxide emissions remain in the atmosphere. The remainder is absorbed through two cycles. One, the biological carbon cycle stores CO2 in plant matter and soils, and two, the aqueous carbon cycle absorbs CO2 from the atmosphere to the oceans. Each of these cycles accounts for 25% and 30% of emitted CO2 respectively. CO2 that dissolves in the oceans reacts to form chemicals that increase the acidity of the oceans. The dissolution of minerals from rocks along coastlines act to counterbalance this acidity in a process called geological weathering. But the extreme increase in the rate and volume of CO2 emissions, especially over the last 60 years, has far exceeded the rate of geological weathering, leading to a 30% increase in ocean acidity. As the oceans acidify, millions of marine species and whole ecosystems, especially coral reefs, will be unable to adapt. We're overwhelming the Earth's natural rebalancing systems and harming its ecosystems in the process. Our recent work at McMaster University and University of Toronto, supported by the Carbon to Sea initiative, has attempted to address these challenges. The challenge ahead? The good news is it is possible to rebalance the pH of the oceans using a process called Ocean Alkalinity Enhancement, OAE. And what's more, this rebalancing will also encourage additional CO2 to be absorbed from the atmosphere. By carefully and continually restoring the ocean's alkalinity, ocean acidification and excess atmospheric CO2 concentrations can be tackled simultaneously. The most obvious approach would be to add finely ground alkali minerals into the ocean to directly lower the acidity of the water. However, the massive scale at which these processes would have to be enacted is staggering. For example, we estimate that the equivalent mass of roughly 8,000 Empire State Buildings worth of alkali substance would need to be added into the oceans each year, starting by mid-century to meet IPCC emissions targets. Clearly, this technique cannot be the sole solution. We believe an electrochemical approach operated on decarbonizing energy is one of the best ways to combat ocean acidification, using a process called bipolar membrane electrodialysis, BMED for short. The acidity of seawater is removed directly without the addition of other substances. This technology only requires seawater, electricity, and specialized membranes. The simplicity and modularity inherent to the BMED technology allows a flexible, scalable, and potentially cost-effective method of carbon dioxide removal. Building at scale, in 2015, with a team of researchers at the Palo Alto Research Center and X Development, we built and tested a small-scale BMED system. This system performed well and shows great promise when coupled with existing facilities such as desalination plants. We identified its primary technological limits, but in 2015 to 17, carbon credits and incentives for climate change technologies were insufficient, and the project was shelved. Now the economic and physical climate has changed. On the economic front, both the tax credits provided by the Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, in the United States, as well as the steadily rising revenue-neutral carbon tax in Canada, are strengthening the economic viability of carbon dioxide reduction technologies. Further, a recent extreme climatic events in the past year, from massive wildfires in Canada to the hottest months on record to the warmest sea temperatures ever measured, are shocking people into the glaring realities of climate change and increasing the demand for real solutions. BMED technology is one of these solutions. BMED technology is limited in part by the specialized membranes that are commercially available, and what's more, these membranes account for a significant portion, around 30% of the capital cost, and have short lifetimes as they are susceptible to degradation. Our work aims to develop scalable, ultra-thin membranes for use in a modified BMED process, while also identifying efficient operational conditions, optimal industrial couplings, and ideal global locations to cost-effectively implement this OAE technology around the world. In ultra-thin membranes, these membranes will attract acidity more efficiently than existing commercial membranes, while their manufacturing technique and optimal usage will dramatically decrease their production and operational costs. Developing cost-effective BMED systems will open a pathway to economically viable OAE. The cautious optimism. Recently, several startups have been formed, such as EBB Carbon, SCA, CO2, and Vesta, that target ocean carbon dioxide removal through OAE. When we encourage open communication about the progress and challenges facing OAE with the public, research institutions, governments, and the private sector to accelerate solutions to OAE's challenges. And in particular, we must assess the impact of readjusting seawater alkalinity on marine ecosystems, while at the same time also developing and implementing trusted systems to measure, report, and verify the net amount of acidity and carbon removal. Alongside this, we must also identify optimal large-scale deployment locations where OAE can be safely and effectively implemented. These considerations are being researched by various groups, but much more support is needed to rapidly vet and scale this technology. To overcome the technological challenges and environmental uncertainties, government, industrial, and nonprofit and venture capital support must be massively scaled and devoted to carefully and responsibly validating the large-scale implementation of OAE technologies around the world. And this is from The Conversation under Creative Commons by Charles-Francois Delanoy, Basil A. Abdelkader, and Jocelyn Riat from The Conversation on phys.org. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.